lurk as much as you want. Yeah, the game's incredible. Can you guys hear the, let's see, modifiers and commentary? Disable. This we might do next week, where you can actually put in commentary into the game, where the developers talk as you play through, which is pretty cool. Yeah, let's just go ahead and start. So usually I teach this, and I teach a video game literature class. For anyone who's new coming into the stream, I'm a high school teacher in New York City. I teach a video game literature class, and this is a game that I make sure to teach with each year to help prepare my students for the New York English Readings exam, which is one of the standardized tests that they need to pass in order to graduate. And I use it because one of the tasks that they need to do is actually.
Hi, Mom. So I got my ticket home from Europe. I get back on June 6th, but it's a really late flight because that was the cheapest, so it gets in at midnight. But don't worry, I'll get a shuttle from the airport so you don't have to pick me up. Like, really seriously, you don't have to. Okay, so love you. See you soon. Bye.
So yeah, as I was saying, I use this game to teach different literary devices or literary techniques and rhetorical devices as found in video games, as opposed to just like traditional text that they're reading in school. So June 7th, 1995, 1:15 a.m. Right, so we start off on this porch, and basically the first day that I play with this game with my students, we just stay here. We don't even go inside the house, and we do it pretty much just to learn the controls and like set the stage. Right, so I know that I'm playing as Caitlin Greenbrier. I think that's how you say it, and we are in Portland. So I'm happy you asked that, Blue Bomber, because the first thing I always ask my students is about tone and mood and like how the game makes you feel, and they're all start making predictions about how someone's dead. This is a horror game, and the trailers even kind of made you think it was, but it's not a horror game by any means. Right, so let's go. Katie, I'm sorry I can't be there to see you, but it is impossible. Please, please don't go digging around trying to find out where I am. I don't want Mom and Dad crossed out, anyone to know. We'll see each other again someday. Don't be worried. I love you. Sam. Alright, so Sam, I guess you'll find out Sam is Katie's sister. And I believe, yep, door is locked. Alright, so once we read this letter as a class, my students were making predictions that Sam is dead or already, that something terrible happened. I think, let me just check that subtitles are on. Not that. Display subtitles. There we go. And I've played this game a million times, so I kind of know where to go. Right, and this is pretty much the main gameplay of it. You kind of pick things up, look at them, throw them away. But there's a key. Game uses this game. I love how this game uses gaming tropes to make the player feel the same way the player character feels. Yeah, totally. So unlock door. Right. So obviously it's a spooky mansion, flickering lights. It's raining. There's thunder in the background and lightning. So it does kind of set the stage as a horror game, but it's just kind of fooling you. So like I said, this is a walking simulator where you pretty much just walk around and just dig around, do some detective work. And there's a lot of reading, which I like to do with my students since they're all English language learners and need practice reading anyway. So movers. So clearly, this documents all the boxes.
Dear Katie,
someone just moved here.
So much has changed, even just since you've been away. We moved into this house. I'm at a new school. And my big sister being gone for a year doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't feel real. But I'm not gonna let it faze me. I used to tell you everything, and if I can't do it in person, because you're off gallivanting around who knows where, I'll tell it to this journal. Just like I was talking to you.
And that's pretty much how the narrative plays out. So there's going to be a lot of story, kind of secondary plot lines that through items that you find in the house, but most of the main narrative is told through these journal entries that we could always go back and re-listen to them if we wanted to. So look, we got my passport, boarding pass, the key. Right, there's lots of items, magazines strewn across the home. So it's meant to, the developers like very intentionally wanted to make it feel like anyone else's house. Right, you can pick up, you can read all the labels on like every single item in the house, which is really cool. There's actually an option to make all the lights on at the beginning of the game. So Janice Greenberry, so you can see that's probably the mob. Alright, no one's home, so you're trying to figure out where everyone is. A novel traveling game. Don't need that. And I don't really care about the electricity bill. I'm just gonna leave all the lights on. Yeah, it's locked. Alright, so you can open everything, read these letters. I'm not going to read all the letters because that would take forever. I also don't like reading script, but I believe there's actually an option to overlay text. Yeah. I do this with my students because reading script in English for them can be challenging, so you can actually make it so that it puts the text over it. All right, so dear Jan, it's good to hear from you again. All this new house business sounds like it's quite the adventure. Remember the little dorm room we shared freshman year when we were miserable fantasizing about our dream homes? I always said I wanted a mansion. You said you just wanted a house in the woods. Look who got both. Somebody up there likes you. I could use some of that magic. Send me some lotto numbers. I'll play them seriously. But I shouldn't be complaining about this good old split level we've had since Bob got transferred to Winnipeg. We just got new vinyl siding. Jealous yet? Let me know if you ever want to trade places. So how are the girls doing? Has Katie left on her big European adventure yet? Right, so I'm Katie, and I was just studying abroad out in Europe. Right back soon. Miss you, roomie. Carol. So we know that Carol's the mom's roommate at some point. 48 cents for this game is a steal. Right, you can open everything and go messing around, but you don't really need to. When I teach this room, I go over setting and how it sets the stage for the rest of the game. And what happened one of the semesters I was teaching with this game, so I'm not going to do it because I don't want to spoil the story, but if you go up against this wall, you see that question mark? You could actually open this, and you're not supposed to until the very end of the game, but one of my students ended up opening this 5 minutes into the game and basically spoiling the end of the story for the entire class. It was hilarious. Alright, some more stuff you can look at. Ooh, I really do enjoy this kind of when I go over what foreshadowing is with my students.
Sam. Sam. Hello. Sam. Sam, where are you?
Alright, this takes place in the 90s, so you get the voicemail, you get handwritten notes because texting isn't around yet.
Please be there.
Definitely check out Gone Home. It's a wonderful game.
Hi, Mom. So I got my ticket home from Europe. I get back on June 6th, but it's a really late flight because that was the cheapest, so it gets in at midnight. But don't worry, I'll get a shuttle from the airport, so you don't have to pick me up. Like, really.
And like I said, it's one of, like, narrative-wise, it's one of the most important games to come out in the past 10 years.
Bye.
Let me turn that off. Let's go to the next room, the hallway. And if you don't know the story, you should give us some of your theories of what happened. So I love this because I'm a teacher, and I never actually give this to my students, but it's funny. So welcome, new student. We hope we hope that you are as excited about your first day at Goodfellow High School as we are. Please be sure to bring the following with you on your first day of classes so that you can get right into the swing of things. One sturdy folder with pockets for each of your 6 class periods. One line notebook per period, or one large notebook with 6 divided sections. At least 6 pens, blue or black ink, and 6 pencils. 1 box of colored pencils, a nutritious lunch, or $2.50 for lunch provided by the school cafeteria, and a positive attitude. And you can notice that the only thing not crossed out is a positive attitude. So clearly Sam is not happy about going to this new school.
Oh my god. You are so lucky you finished high school before we moved into this house. So, it's the first day of school, and there I am, introducing myself to the class. And I say that I just moved into the house on Arbor Hill. All of a sudden, every kid in the room turns and just stares like I suddenly transformed into a mutant. I just stood there, wishing pretty hard for a rewind button. Because now maybe nobody knows my name, but they all know who I am. The Psycho House Girl. Great.
So once they mentioned the Psycho House Girl, my students were reaffirmed in their predictions that someone's going to die and that it's a horror story. So it's not letting me get rid of that. So you can also find these postcards from Katie, right, from her trip in Europe. So hi, Mom, Dad, and Sam. I'm in Paris. I've done many Parisian things, including eating, I don't know how to speak French, Le Petit Junior or something, and wearing a beret. I'm going to have lots of film to develop when I get back, because, disposable cameras and whatnot. Sam, I'm bringing you back something from the Shakespeare Book Company, since you were my favorite sister. Love you all, Katie. Right, so we got a obituary, Oscar Doc Mason. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but the mansion belonged to this person beforehand, Oscar Mason. And it says at the bottom, you can see his survivors include his nephew, Terrence Greenbrier. So you know that this is your great uncle who passed away and passed down the house. So this room, we get into the dad's office, and this is where I like to teach about how some games have a main plot, and then there's often like side plots and side missions. So this entire room is really optional, but it just gives you more details about the family. So the killing of JFK, right? Some conspiracy theory stuff. Turn on the light. You can do better. Back to the basics, and back in time. What if JFK wasn't JFK, right? So it's some real conspiracy theory stuff. And I wasn't always allowed in my dad's office, so it's kind of fun snooping through this dad's office. Ooh. So this is from the uncle, right? So hello, Terrence. I write on what I hope and imagine must be a joyous occasion. News reaches me that you're newly married to a wonderful young woman. I have had more than a little time during my long days and nights at the house on Arbor Hill to consider my past, my family, and my thoughts have often lingered on your development and welfare in the 10 years since we last met. Your marriage gives me much reassurance in this regard. I wish you and your new bride many happy years together. You are always welcome on Arbor Hill, though I will understand, of course, if you feel you cannot accept this invitation. Yours very sincerely, Oscar Mason. I need a combo. Probably a light, yeah. So here we get into their library. Right, more magazines. I like that you can pick up almost everything. throw it where you want. So this is where you get more details, right, about the father. So the accidental pariah, and you can see it's written by Terrence Greenbrier, so now you know that he's an author, right? And you can go the entire game without actually learning that, but they do put these here. Stranger under my roof. Ah, 0451. Dear Terrence, and we're not going to read through this whole thing, but basically, if you do read through it, it actually goes over how the father's been struggling as an author, and that he's not been, his books haven't been selling well, and this is kind of like, this is your last chance, you have to get better. Or the production studio would cut him off. Oop. Zero, 4, 5, 1. Let's see what we got in here. Dear Mr. Mason, please find enclosed your original document, a typed copy for your records. The notarized copy has been filled at our own office. Thank you for entrusting the firm with this important matter. Right, and so this is the will and testament of Oscar, the great uncle who has passed away. Right, and he's basically leaving it to Terrence and the family. So we don't need to read through the entire thing. Unless you guys want me to. If you want me to read through everything, I'll read through everything. Electrical inspection form. You can see that the wiring is, while technically up to standards, it's not fully there, which is why some of the lights flicker. Now this room clearly makes it seem like a horror movie. How many horror movies do you walk into a dark room with the TV still on?
Residents are strongly urged to stay indoors and secure all windows and doors. Flood conditions are expected at lower elevations.
So it says, the kid, they love this game. Right, so Sam thought this might help. I don't think we need the overlay text the entire game.
The Northwest Weather Service reports high winds.
Right, so Sam thought this might help Dad, making friends. Right, so clearly Sam is your sister is having a tough time making friends. Right, she wasn't happy about going to school the first day, and how her parents are trying to give her books about how to make friends and how she's feeling lonely.
You know that feeling where the first moment you see someone, it's like they have a big gold star around them, and you have to get to know them? Well, there's this girl. I think she's a senior. She's usually dressed kind of punk, but sometimes I see her in this, army uniform, and she's always drawing in this notebook, looking so intense. I had no idea how I would ever, have an excuse to talk to her. Till I noticed she and her friends hang out and play Street Fighter at the 7-Eleven every day after school.
So it's fun explaining to my students, right, who aren't from the United States, what punk is. That was a cool... Hello, Science Streams, how's it going? Right, so it's fun explaining what punk is to my students. And the second they heard Street Fighter, they all got way more interested into the game, since they often, right, it has video game references. They love that.
This is a severe weather warning. The Northwest Weather Service reports high winds and torrential rain conditions.
And every time, so there's lots of cassette players scattered throughout the game where you can listen to it, and every time they would last about 2 seconds before taking the music out.
Strongly urged to stay indoors.
Ooh, what was the name of that one called? Girl Scouts.
At lower elevations.
I like the music too, but my students are not accustomed to it, so they think it's crazy, as they put it, white people music. So this is a cute, right? How many stories have your parents kept that you wrote when you were little?
The Northwest Weather Service.
So Captain Allegra looked off to the ocean and went on forever. or so it seems. Someday she would find the edge and get to the paradise there, and she heard a cannon fire boom. It was the black pirate ship Shield. I thought we lost them at Horse Island, the first mate said. Looks like you thought too soon. The black ship came up alongside. Captain Black himself came out on the deck of the black ship. He yelled to Captain Allegra, "You're never gonna find the edge. There ain't no paradise, and your father were a liar." Captain Allegra yelled back, "Then why do you keep following us, you imbecile?" Imbecile spelled, interestingly. The first mate yelled out, "We'll stop you, Captain Black. We'll find the edge of the world, and you'll see her father was no liar." The battle kept going until Captain Allegra's ship got away. "Now west," she said, and the ship sailed towards the sunset. So this is kind of setting the stage for other instances in which Captain Allegra shows up in some of Sam's homework assignments.
Residents are strongly urged to stay indoors and secure all windows and doors. Flood conditions are expected at lower elevations.
We got a nice little pillow for it. Some eating pizza, so you know. Dr. Jitters. Hauntings and poltergeists, right? And my students know what poltergeists are.
The Northwest Weather Service reports high winds and torrential rain conditions affecting the following counties.
Crumpled up paper, right? So everything in this game is placed very intentionally. So it's hard to... Let me go put on those options to read that. Some of the things are hard for me to read. Hey, are you the new girl, Sam? I'm Tommy at the back behind you. Wave if you got this and write back, right? Since students pass notes to each other in class. Hi, Tommy. Yes, I'm Samantha, and yes, I'm new. What's up? I just thought since you're new, maybe you could use a friend. I don't have a lot of friends either, and so I thought I'd ask you something if you don't mind. Do you? Yes, no? No, I don't mind. What do you want to ask? Was it just your uncle who went psycho, or does it run in the family? Right. So clearly this house is tainted. Something happened here that the school knows about, and now Sam's dealing with the consequences of moving in. Department of Agriculture. Right, and you'll notice a lot of the things that deal with the mom have to do with the Department of Agriculture. Turn on some more lights. So here's what I was talking about with Allegra. So reproductive system worksheet, right? So she has an assignment to write about the menstrual cycle, right? And she goes on, Sam goes on to write this whole story about the menstrual cycle, and it's amazing. So I'll use the main text to read it, because I think it's hilarious. So the early morning, September 1st, 1939, right, Essa Glatt stares out the window of her train as it travels from Vienna back to her home village of Wieluń in Poland. As the train rumbles along and the sun rises over the countryside, she can only think of her dear Borislav, the boy she is engaged to wed. Meanwhile, deep within her guts, an ovarian starts to develop. Essa's train approaches its destination. Her heart races. The lining of the uterus is getting thick and soft. As Essa steps off the train, her eyes dart quickly across the gathered crowd. Then there, her dear Boris, still in his baker's smock. He must have dropped in early morning duties at his father's shop to come meet her. Her heart skips a beat. The ovary releases the ovum. It travels through the fallopian tube. Over the wheezing of steam engines, a deep hum grows. It's coming from the sky. Dark shadows pass over the station, a whistling sound. Essa, her thoughts only a second faster than the bombs, reaches out towards her dear Boris across the crowd. Their eyes lock, and the moment freezes. The flashing smoke envelops him almost instantly. In the assault by German forces, almost 75% of the people in her hometown are killed. The rest, including Essa, and for a time, Borislav, huddle in a half-destroyed church. He is blind, his legs are missing, bandaged with torn bed sheets, as his egg will not be meeting a sperm. It dissolves. About 2 weeks later, Boris loses his grip on life. Essa has given up her relations to keep Boris alive, but in the end, nothing can save him, since the lining of the uterus is not needed for pregnancy. It comes out through the vagina. Essa vows to survive. She sets off to join the Polish resistance as a daring spy and saboteur. Another ovum starts to develop in one of the ovaries, and the process begins again. It's incredible how the female body knows how to prepare for pregnancy. Right? And then she writes this amazing story, which if any of my students wrote something like this, I'd give them an immediate 100. Right? But then her teacher writes, "See me" in the big red letters. right? So clearly this is not flying with whichever teacher she has at this time, of which my students would then relate how they might have some teachers who are similar at school, but I told them that I'm not the best person to share that with. But it shows that Sam is very unique, right? And she's a great writer and thinks differently. You don't need to read everything.
Now that it's happened, I just can't. I've done the best I could.
You can see more of the father's books. He has boxes and boxes of them because they don't sell very well.
Can't get you off my mind.
Samantha, please give this to your mother.
Voodoo, mildew, and shandu.
So Janice, right, thank you for having Danny over in your new home. He has missed having his friend Samantha in the neighborhood very much. Danny asked if he could lend Samantha his Nintendo Street Fighting tape, and I gave him permission. He needs to spend less time with those games anyway. No hurry in returning it. Let Samantha know she's welcome at her house to visit anytime. Sincerely, Mary Shoots.
I left my trunk in town.
Hello, Language Arts. With Adam. With Adam. Language Arts with Adam. Ah. The name comes up a little funny on my screen. How's it going?
When you live in one place your whole life, your next door neighbor is kind of like your default friend. And Daniel only got weirder over the years.
I assume you teach English Language Arts,
so
Adam?
moving away has been a good excuse to, like, not see him anymore. But he did always have the good Nintendo games. Maybe I'll give him a call.
So again, bringing up Nintendo games, my students loved it. So Adam, I teach, every year I teach a video game literature course, and this is the first game I teach them with, and I'm usually going over different literary techniques and rhetorical devices used through this video game. And I usually start with this one because it's got a strong narrative and because it's very accessible. The controls are easy. Even if you aren't accustomed to playing video games, it's pretty easy to hop in and know exactly what to do. So it is usually right around here that I actually start talking about point of view and why the game is played through the first-person perspective. Just to see what my students think, right, about how it's putting you in Katie's shoes. It reminds me of Hugo's House of Horrors from back in the 90s. Yeah. Okay, so look here. So, hi Lonnie. So Lonnie was the name of the girl that she mentioned in the other tape earlier. So if you wanted to come over to my house still this afternoon, that would be cool. I can drive. It's kind of far, but I can drive you home too, so hopefully that's fine. Right back and leave this in my locker if you still want, and we can meet in the parking lot after 6. Samantha. Yeah, I'm totally in. See you there, then I'm gonna kick your butt. Get ready. And of course, it's got the classic Street Fighter drawing. All of my students recognize it. Especially since a lot of my students don't, back in their native home countries, they tend not to have the more up-to-date consoles. They usually have the Segas, the Nintendo Entertainment Systems, maybe usually N64s, but they definitely have these older consoles rather than like Xbox One and PS4. So we play together as a class. I have it projected in the front of the room, and I'll have students take turns as the player each day. And I usually have one day a boy plays, the next day a girl plays, then a boy, then a girl, then a boy, then a girl. And I'll usually, whenever there's something like this up on the screen, I'll have a student read it out loud for the class.
So you know what they say about the best laid plans of mice and men? Yeah, turns out it applies to Street Fighter too. At least I worked up the courage to walk into the 7-Eleven and ask for a turn, but all that practice at home did not exactly translate in the wild. So after I was finished getting my butt kicked, I followed them outside while they smoked. And that was when she asked me if I was that psycho house girl. But then she said she's always really wanted to see the psycho house. Her name is Lonnie. She's coming over tomorrow.
Right, so she's now made a friend with this girl named Lonnie who's interested in why she's called the Psycho House Girl rather than all the other students who've been bullying her. And Language Arts Adam, if you want to try this on my website, Hey Listen Games, I have 2 different versions of the curriculum. I have one that's much shorter, where usually I talk about social justice issues, which you'll see as we get more into the game. But then I have a larger, like, 30-day unit where I teach with this game and another game, What Remains of Edith Finch. And I break it down day by day, where today we're going over setting, this day we're going over tone and mood, this day we're going over point of view, this day we're going over conflict. And those are all on my website. And it's free there, you can find it there. See, the door at the end of that hallway is locked, so we have to find somewhere else to go. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Anytime, I respond pretty quickly. You can like either on Twitter, there's a contact form on the website, whatever's easier for you. What am I doing? There's the light switch. Pack of cards. Control burn schedule for Boone County, right? So you can see, you could have a student read this out loud. I didn't have them read everything because it would just take forever to do that, but you can see that it highlighted Janice Greenbrier, which is the mom, so you know that she works in nature conservation. So you can find these cassette tapes, Bratmobile, For Sam. Love it, right? And those are the names of the songs. You're gonna like this one.
It's weird hanging out with girls. Daniel was around ever since I was little, and other girls? I don't know. But being around Lonnie is like instantly just right. I gave her the grand Psycho House tour and took my revenge on Super Nintendo. And it was like, I don't know, I finally found someone I feel normal around. I drove her home and she gave me this tape and said, "You have got to listen to this." I haven't stopped playing it since.
So this game total is probably about 2 hours and 45 minutes. If you spend time reading everything, you might get like 3 to 3.5 hours. But that's part of the reason why I like to teach with it. It's harder to teach with long games, just because it can be difficult to find the class time to do that. So I tend to prefer using these smaller experiences like Gone Home. Sam, stop leaving every damn light on in the house. You're as bad as your sister. I am currently leaving all the lights on. Read sternly worded letter. To whom it may concern, and I love this is where you start to get Samantha's like sarcastic, snarky attitude. I, Samantha Greenbrier, am 17 years old and therefore an independent, fully functional human being. The fact that you still forbid me from going into the city on my own is frankly absurd. Compare with Katie, who is only 3 years older than me, and yet you allowed her to go all the way across an ocean to another continent on her own. I just want to spend an evening in a normal, totally safe city on my own like a human being. And since you may also remember that I have my own car, you can't really stop me. Warmest regards, your daughter, Samantha. Alright, so clearly somewhat of a tense relationship with the parents. Get another TV left on. See what music we can play. Cool Schmool.
We're so cool, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're so cool. We're so cool, yeah.
My students absolutely love this, that you can actually find these Super Nintendo games. We all remember these, right? I don't remember how many codes I used to have, key codes I used to have memorized and moves in games and whatnot. See, Sam's a bit of a mess. Don't need a pillow. Little stuffed animal. Right, another magazine. This is the one me and my dad are building. Want to go for a ride when it's done. Yeah, I know, especially the Super Nintendo games scattered across. I think. What can we look at? Sam, I think the creative writing track would be would be perfect for you. So this is actually good. A teacher understands that Sam is good at creative writing, right? Looking at from her previous assignments, that's true. So there might be a program, a pre-college program that she can go to. What do we got here? And I think, I don't know where it is, but there actually was a copy of Zelda somewhere in the bedroom, but I'm blanking out on where it was left. The Holy Bible. So this is what I meant when she would keep writing about Captain Allegra. Right. I'm not going to read the entire thing. If you guys do want me to read more of the documents, just let me know and I will. So stuff like this I'll read because it deals more with the main plot. So hi Lonnie, I wrote this in first period and left it in your locker on the way to school. It's what all the cool kids are doing. I've decided. Write me back. Also, here's an idea for something to draw. 2 cats on a motorcycle. Hey, this is a good idea. What all the cool kids have actually doing... Hard to read. What all the cool kids are doing is actually sending each other pages on beepers, but we're cooler than them because guess what? They can't put this on a beeper. Right? She drew 2 cats on a motorcycle. Your drawing of cats is so good that I added a background to make it even better. Maybe I should stick to writing, though. Haha, I like it. How did you know they were about to be abducted by aliens? Alright, I'm looking at Mr. Fish right now. I feel like he probably would have a lot of cats. Also, like his secret shame is that he watches 90210 religiously. I'm going to ask him about the cats after class. He said he has 2 cats and that he's never watched 90210, but I could see in his eyes he was lying. Hey, Taria, Beth. So Gone Home that's this game. I believe it was released in 2013. It's a walking simulator game, which is basically the main gameplay is walking around a home and just kind of letting the narrative play out as you rummage around and discover more. And it's a game that I teach with every school year. I'm a high school teacher, and I teach with this game in one of my classes. And it's one of the more important games to come out in the past decade, in my opinion. And we're actually about to get to a crucial moment in the story. So this, right? The game makes you feel like it's a horror game, and then you end up with what looks like blood. But then you see this down here. You can see it's dye, right? It's just red coloring.
Lonnie brought her hair dye over today. She said, I need to fix these roots. Think you could help? Dyeing hair is weirdly intimate. I don't know if I've touched someone else's scalp before. That's pretty intimate, right? It felt intimate. We looked in the mirror together after, and I expected her to say something about how it looked crappy, or good, or whatever. But that's when she said, you're so beautiful. And she was looking at me. Right in that moment, I wanted to say something, but I waited. And the moment was gone.
So before we actually get into that, one thing you'll notice is that they mention they look in the mirror, but you can never actually find any mirrors in the game, and I think that's because the developers didn't want to program reflections. because you're not really supposed to be able to see your own face. But yeah, so after that journal entry with Sam saying to, or Lonnie saying to Sam, "You're so beautiful," you can kind of guess where it's going. Sam's mentioned that that hanging out with girls is weird. It's different than hanging out with boys, how she's accustomed. She's had difficulty making friends, but she's connected very well with Lonnie. And rightly so, my students started to predict that they do like each other, right? And that Sam might be gay or bisexual. But remember that this game takes place in the 90s, and the 90s, right, there are issues with it today, and in the 90s there were definitely a lot more issues regarding coming out. So, hey Sam, do you want to see Pulp Fiction, right? So, Language Arts Adams, you said you're feeling old. This is taking place when Pulp Fiction came out. Right after school at the Coliseum, it came out last weekend, and Todd won't shut up about it, so either it's good, or we can make fun of him for liking it. My mom is supposed to cook dinner for us tonight for a change. I can just stitch out of it properly. What time? Also, isn't that movie supposed to be really violent? Am I going to barf? According to Todd, it's pretty hardcore. I guess Uma Thurman gets stabbed in the heart with a heroin needle, so that's kind of hilarious. Also, something about cheeseburgers is important. Todd wants to see it again. 7:15, okay? Don't barf. Alright, see you then. Here's a burger barfing. I do think that was an adequate description of Pulp Fiction. So now we have an opportunity to rummage through the parents' bedroom. Because I know I did that when I was a kid. When no one was home. Don't tell my parents that, though. Dear Mom, Dad, and Sam, I'm in the tunnel. This is my second passage through the tunnel. I'm on my way back from London, this time going to Brussels, Belgium. Sorry I didn't write you on the way to London, but I was too excited about the tunnel. London was great. Dad, I know you've always wanted to visit, and I think you really should. You'd love it. If you all wanted to come back here as a family sometime, I guess I could be convinced. Love you all, Katie. Right, so that's when she was still studying abroad. Got a bunch of tapes. Mitten. So that's from the mom's old roommate, but you don't need to read everything. Ghost Mansion. Watercolor technique. Someone wants to paint. Where's the light? There's the light. Alright, so again, here's a bathroom, but there's no mirror. It's one of them. I feel like they probably could have put a mirror into the game, but I won't complain too much. This is a nice big bathroom. Look at this place. After the honeymoon, rediscovering yourselves personally, spiritually, sexually, right? So now we know that the parents might also be having some issues with their marriage. So again, all these things are optional. You don't need to rummage through everything, but doing so will give you a greater sense of the story. Katie, Mom and Dad were going to make up the guest room for you to stay in over the summer, but you came home on such short notice that they weren't around to do it. You can use my room if you want. I won't be needing it anymore because she left, right? So this note was clearly left recently. So this was going to be the guest room, but it's just full of all the moving supplies. So here they're keeping a journal of paranormal activity in the house. Of course, red lights are spooky. Sam's darkroom, do not enter if red lights are on. So this is where my students got all conspiracy theory, right? It's locked, the red lights are on, they're assuming that there's a murdered body up there still. Even though it's pretty clear at this point that it's not really a horror game. I got another cassette player. Performance evaluation for the mom at her job. Get more light. Right, so watercolors, now we're seeing that the mom is probably painting. Got the paintbrush down there. Ah, here's the cassette. Let's go see what great music we got this time.
Sometimes you just have to lie to Mom and Dad. Like when Lonnie asked me to see a band with her and stay over at her friend's place in the city after. That's a lie to Mom and Dad's situation. But it was so worth it. The girls on stage were just so loud and real and awesome. And everybody was moving together like one huge tide of sound. Between two songs, Lonnie leaned over and said, "How do you like your first show?" I was so happy. I felt tears starting in my eyes. And then she up and hugged me. I think she could tell.
Alright, so after that journal entry, we had a cool conversation with my students talking about when it's appropriate to lie to Mom and Dad and whether they have, how often they do it, and they were very openly honest. And they were sharing the times how, especially, right, living in New York City, very easy to just leave and walk wherever you want, or get onto public transportation and go wherever you want. So they were pretty frank about the times when they just leave and tell their parents they're somewhere else or with a friend, but they're doing something that maybe they shouldn't be doing. So it was cool for them to relate to Sam in that capacity there, of her going to a concert. And then going over how at the end, she says that Lonnie could tell, right? And at that point, my students pretty much know that they're talking about how they might like, that they like each other. Lonnie, holy crap, I was in the library and I noticed something in the corner and I found a secret passage and it had Oscar's creepy old stuff in it. Oh my god, I have to go see this. We're skipping 6. Right, so now there's some secret passages in the house and this is the map that you have to use to go find it. So we can see that there's a secret passage between the library and some closets. So we have to go back to the library. And I think we have to go downstairs, yes. Captain Allegra, your costume, my costume. So clearly they were making a costume for Halloween. Right, just gotta do some backtracking to get to the library. Can I look in there? What's this? Temporary personal transfer. Yeah, we don't need that. That's just transferred for the mom's job. You know, there were times where I wish I kind of lived in a house this big and expansive, but then I remember that I'm also perfectly happy in my tiny little studio apartment. And having a place this big would just be too much maintenance. Where's the library? I missed it. Dad's office, gotta go to the library. and now we can see a secret panel. Now we got all these newspaper clippings attached to the walls, or comics. Examine map. Ghost Hunter, Sam and Lonnie's secret house investigation log. Hidden compartments found 3. Alright, so now there are 3 hidden compartments throughout the house. One in the library, with one in the upstairs hall, and one in the foyer, the entrance to the house. Evidence of supernatural. So now we gotta go find those. Let's go back to the library. In the other corner. Yep. Misfits. Alright, so this is the concert that they went to go see?
At Todd's brother's place after the show, there was only a futon to sleep on, so Lonnie and I shared it. The lights went out. I was turned toward her. My eyes started to adjust, and then I could see...
That's funny.
She was looking at me, too. In the dark, she smiled. My heart was beating so fast. I rolled over. I felt so, I don't know, nervous? After a minute, she put her arm around me and was so close and whispered in my ear, "I really like you." I just nodded my head, and I really hope she could tell. I really hope that she meant what I think she did. I felt like a shook-up can of soda ever since. I hope we have the chance to talk before I explode.
So after this journal entry, we went over what "I really like you" obviously is alluding to. And a lot of my students were asking why it was so difficult for them to just share their feelings, because they're more accustomed to people being open about LGBTQ people in modern day, even though there's still a number of issues around that. But then we went back and talked about the context of the 90s and why, especially in what seems like a rural or suburban school, why it might, or why it was difficult for people to admit to those feelings or to who they are. So I think over here. Yes. So we got, I think this is property of Sam private. So we got part of the locker combination. Okay. The Green Glacier. So they're private. Do not read. So here we get more of the Allegra story going on, which is, right, these are just kind of there to build Sam's personality. Sometimes if my students want, I've gone semesters with my students not reading any of them, I've gone semesters with them reading all of them. I really leave it up to them about whether or not they want to read through all of these, since it's optional, but it does build in character development, especially since characterization is one of the literary devices, rhetorical devices and literary techniques that we talk about, since in the test that they have to take to graduate, they have to write about literary techniques. So I do at the beginning of the year in general, not specifically before this game. I'll set norms at basically the whole first 2 weeks of school in general. For me, is just setting norms, and then I don't tell them going in that this game is going to deal with homosexuality and teens coming out to each other. Because I like how in the game it comes up very naturally, so they build relationships and connections with characters, and then they learn this added element, so that they, it's good to have that connection before just plopping them with that information. Where am I going? Yeah, There's one over here somewhere. There we go. Alright, we got more locker, so 0. The Ouija board. My students love the Ouija board. Clearly using the Ouija board. Hello, Oscar. What do you want to come back? Obviously where that's going. So, I think now we can open this locker. 051, 0501. 501. Open. So now we got a picture of Lonnie, 1994. Right, the red hair dye that we saw in the bathtub.
Lonnie came over today, but everything was different. She was sitting at my desk chair, and she wouldn't look at me. Finally, I asked her what was going on. She said she felt like she'd done something wrong that night in the city. Like I must think... But I said no. There was nothing wrong. I just wanted to say... But I couldn't find the words. I felt like I was gonna cry, but I wasn't sad. She got up and sat next to me on the bed. I looked at her. Lonnie, do you think you could ever... And that's when she kissed me.
So when that moment happened, usually my students would give like a round of applause that it finally happened, especially since I know we're just playing through this in, you know, probably 2 sessions, but the way I teach it in class, this is broken up, so this is probably already day 5 of playing the game. So there's an entire week, right, leading up to this moment, because we'll play like 15 minutes at a time. Right, we got Sam looking at women's magazines, or men, or gentlemen's magazines. I like how it says, "Gosh, Sam." Right, so now it's out there, right? It's out in the open that Sam is, right, or at least interested in Lonnie. They've kissed for the first time. And I also picked up the basement key in the locker, so now we can head back to the basement. Oh yeah, you can see the portrait of the family. Alright, so we got Sam, me, Janice, and what's the dad's name? Terry. I like how they kind of just scratch the names on to the plaque. How many of the... Okay. We're almost halfway through the game, so I think... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright. Play a little bit more. I'm guessing like 10, 15 more minutes, and then since we're gonna we'll break this into I guess shorter episodes, that way they're evenly spaced out. Grab chips. Don't need the chips. Dear Samantha, I would like to cordially thank you for having me to your abode for the Thanksgiving holiday with your lovely family. I enjoyed the flavorful potatoes, and also it was weird being around your parents for that long, but it's pretty funny how impossible it is for your dad not to be awkward for more than 30 seconds at a time. Very cordially yours, your close friend and confidant, Lonnie. Right? Dear Miss DeSoto, allow me to take this opportunity to thank you in kind for being such a gracious host of the festivities at your father's estate. Following the aforementioned meal with my parents, your family's Thanksgiving feast was more enjoyable of the 2 events. I must say, I especially appreciated the time I spent with your grandmother, who is a lovely woman with sterling taste and a refined air. Let's do it again sometime. Next year, shall we? Right. I like how they're kind of being kind of sarcastic in talking to parents. So this is not a horror game. I know it kind of seems like it might be a horror game. I feel like that was purposeful on the end of the developers. Also, welcome in general, or Tholete. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right. Hopefully I did, but because when going into it, they don't want you to be able to anticipate what the story is really going to be about. So it's kind of like the mood and the setting of the game is more of a diversion. So Sam plus Lonnie and a heart.
It's different now. I mean, we still hang out all the time like before. But now when no one else is around... Well, you know. So you could say we're dating. But it's secret. Secret dating? I don't know. I mean, I guess that's the real difference. Now when we get off the phone, or go home for the night, or it's just quiet and we're alone, we say I love you.
So yeah, it does. I mean, it's very purposely made to feel like it's going to be a sad story. I feel like they want you to feel that way. A lot of my students were still anticipating that this would be a sad story. But that journal entry I really liked, because then we went into how many of my students in the room were currently or at some point during high school secretly dating someone else without telling their parents. And, probably half the class raised their hands one time. And it was just, this is one of those times where the lesson kind of derailed into this other conversation, but that's fine. It's a teachable moment where we were just talking about secret dating, why we do it, how I did it when I was younger. Because no one wants to talk to their parents about this stuff, right? So that's why it's part of the reason why I like teaching this game so much, because the students can relate so much with Sam as a character. You can see she has another. So this is interesting. So she gets another homework assignment about the menstrual cycle, and here she just gives very boring, standardized scientific answers instead of writing that cool story, and she gets a check plus instead of a C me from the teacher. So summarize the educational use of this game into 3 bullet points. What would they be? I would say, right, literary elements. That's why I use it. Narrative and social justice, as we'll get more into. Right now that we know the two of them are secret dating, they say that they're in love, right? So we know that they're gay, but we haven't gotten into why that's a difficult thing for them to be in the 90s. But the game will start to touch on that more as we progress through the story. But that might be more in the next session of the game. So Samantha, dear Samantha, congratulations. I'm pleased to inform you of your admission to the creative writing track of Reed College Summer Program for Young Scholars for its 1995 session. We believe you have much to contribute to the Reed College community. Based on your portfolio and academic record, I am also pleased to offer you financial aid to cover 75% of the summer program's tuition and fees. The attached documentation delineates your schedule, optional secondary track choices, and your dormitory assignment. Please remember to submit the attached form if you wish to be eligible for one of the 3 Reed full-time undergraduate scholarships to be awarded to exemplary students at the end of each summer program. We very much look forward to your attendance. Again, congratulations on your admission. Best wishes from all of us at Reed College. Right, so we see that Sam is a strong writer. We see that she's a creative writer, and she's actually now been, with scholarship, accepted to a program.
I'm so stupid sometimes. I was telling Lonnie that I got into my college summer program thing. And I was all making plans like, you should come visit me, stay in my dorm room. But she said, Sam, I ship out on June 6th. I was like, ship out? To where? She said, to basic training. What did you think I was doing all that ROTC stuff for? I guess she's been planning to join the Army right after high school since she was like 12. And I guess she's really going to do it. So I was like, after graduation, I'm just never going to see you again? She said, let's just have fun while we can.
Right, so a couple of things there, right? So now we know that Lonnie is potentially joining the military, right? And during the 90s, I'll get into this more as the story progresses, right? That was when don't ask, don't tell was a policy where if you were gay, you were allowed to join the military as long as you didn't say anything, right? So in the Navy, she can be all she can be in the Navy. She can sail the 7 seas in the Navy. Is there a difference between literary element and narrative? I guess I always consider the narrative as a type of literary element. I guess in my mind, I would say plot is the literary element where you go over plot. Narrative, I just mean like the story, right? The reason why I choose this game is because it shows that narratives in games can be worth teaching. Because, when I say that I teach with video games, among people who I know, they all kind of get it, but among people who I'm still meeting, right, a lot of people are skeptical about the idea of using video games in schools. So I think for this game I'm saying narrative because I think it stands up with other books, movies, comics and graphic novels have a big place in schools now as well. And I think that this could be something that's worth teaching. But I do talk about plot, right? Since I go over different literary elements with this game, plot is one of the ones that we talk about. English wasn't my strongest subject either. I did play Never Alone. Actually, on my website, Language Arts Atom, I do have a lesson plan for Never Alone, because when I don't teach global history anymore, but when I did teach global history, I used that game, and it's really wonderful. Also, I wanted to touch on this. You can see this is Richard Greenbrier. This is probably your grandfather, with his face cut out as a portrait. Yes, my lesson plan for Never Alone is free. If you go to the social studies or the English language arts section of the site, I think it's in both of them. But I love that game, how it embeds like interviews with actual Alaskan natives, going over the lore of that specific story. Got more of the father's books just lying around. We don't need to read that. Got more music. Enough of the music. What my students did, if there's a trash can, they would sometimes throw it in the trash. You should do Wolfenstein to discuss social studies, in particular the very real Mecha Hitler. So I've thought about games like that, where history is portrayed in a different way than real life, but it's so hard with those larger games. Like, you almost have to have the game already beat with save points preloaded so that you can kind of hop into the game at different moments. Which I do when I taught with Super Mario Odyssey, but not everyone has the patience to play through an entire game and have the moments already set for you to go and teach with. Yuan DeSanto, Mr. Bender Greenbrier. We got a lot here. Dear Sam, today's Spanish lesson. We have different parts. I'm so happy you liked the drawing. I was thinking of us when I drew it. I knew you'd be able to tell. you'd love Mexico. I think probably the native here, does that say native? The nature here is totally different than back home. I can think about Allegra and the first mate lost on the mysterious island where even the plants are out to get them, and then I think of them together out there in the wilderness together, and I start thinking of you again. I lie here in bed and I can almost feel you. I've been trying to save her for when we're together again. I haven't done a good job, okay, but I tried. Okay, enough about that. Your last letter got to me the day before we start driving back north. We'll be racing this letter home. If I get home first, we can read it together. And yes, I'm taking tons of photos. We'll have to spend so much time together in the darkroom. To amor, Lonnie. Right, so Lonnie went on vacation. Now they're writing letters back and forth. And these things are part of the reason why I like teaching this game, because my students are all English language learners. So getting them to read out loud in English is something I try to do in any of my classes regardless. You're playing through Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 and save at specific parts. Have you played Final Fantasy 7 Remake yet, Space Cowboy? I'm going to read that in a minute. What's this? So this thing I like a lot. It's a long day. The first time I was in my room in the middle of the night, I woke up and Lonnie was kissing me. The clock said 3:13. Her face was spectral, and it's dim. Right, so there. Okay, not reading any more of that. I love this because Sam was clearly writing about fooling around with Lonnie in bed. And, right, you, the player, are Sam's sister. Right, so she started reading it, and now I'm not allowed to read it anymore. Nope, definitely not reading any more of that. Not gonna happen. Right, because obviously you don't want to read about your sister having sex. Here's a set list for the Girl Scouts.
Todd's band lost their singer. Todd said he sucked. Lonnie said he got sick of Todd's shit, and he was complaining about needing a new singer. So Lonnie was like, I can sing. And they were all kind of like, you can? And she was like, probably. But she's been rehearsing with them for like a week now. And I finally got to see them play in Todd's basement today. And she's actually really amazing. I feel so proud when she's on stage. It's incredible being in awe of someone you love. So everybody knows it's like a temporary situation till she ships out in June. But till then, I'm gonna be at every single show.
Right, so they're still trying to make the most of it before she ships out to the military. Now we're just in a closet. This one doesn't work. And I think we're gonna stop in a minute. I know exactly where. Yeah, right around here, because I believe. Yep, we're just about halfway through the game, so I think this is a good place to end it for the night, and then next week we'll finish off the game. That way it's in two nice sections. So thank you guys for joining me on this playthrough of Gone Home. It is one of my favorite games. It's one of my favorite games. It's definitely one of my favorite games to teach with. For anyone who's new in the chat, we do have a Geeks Like Us Discord that you should all be a part of. Hopefully someone, Space Cowboy or Professor Stock, can add the link to the Discord. It'd be really cool to keep talking with you guys, about this stream, and then we also have streams other nights as well it would be really cool for you all to continue hanging out with us. Especially since, there's a lot of teachers and psychologists who use video games a lot in their practice, and I'm trying to get more teachers and educators to come hang out, like Historian in the chat. Thank you, right? So if you want to join the Discord, there it is in the chat. Thanks again for coming, and I will see you guys all next week, same time, Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. I hope